All right, guys, we're out in the shop, and I'm going to give you an update on what's been going on out on Kentucky Lake, and we're just going to jump right into it here. A lot to cover. You know, you've followed any of my updates throughout the spring, it's been a little bit strange year. Weights were good, fishing was good, but it was just a little bit different. What I mean by that is we would get a warm up, and then it would cool down, and then it would warm up again. Water temperatures warmed way up, then cooled way back down. No rain to speak of up until recently, and that led to no current moving through the system. So what happened was when the smallmouth and largemouth got done spawning on this lake, generally they'll start moving out on gravel bars and points at the mouths of the creeks, and they'll kind of stage up before they come on out. And you can generally it's one of my favorite things to do, is take a little 5/16 divine swim bait head, a little jig head with a little 3.2 or 3.8 on it, and just wind it around out there and catch all the post-spawn smallmouth you want. And you'll catch some good ones too, but this year I never did run into that, which was very strange. And you know, I assume that it's probably just the lack of current. You know, we didn't have any rain to speak of. We were going through a severe drought. TVA wasn't moving any water. I mean, literally, you'd look at the app and it's like 6,000, you know. It was nothing. I mean, not moving any water at all. And generally that will affect your moving baits. I'm a power fisherman. I like to throw crankbait, swim bait, things like that, you know, chunk and wind. And on the Tennessee River lakes, you've got to have that current moving in order for that to work and be efficient with it, you know, and to get a lot of bites. And we just didn't have that this spring. So another thing was water would come up. You know, it actually shot up to like 360 here recently. I forgot to look to see exactly what we're sitting at right now. I assume we're right there around Summer Pool somewhere, maybe a little bit more. But it came up and it got like 360 and a half. I mean, we had a lot of water. The problem was this year that it shot up a little bit later in the year, and a lot of those fish had already moved out. We caught a good many fish up shallow, you know, just taking advantage of that shallow bite. Everybody loves to flip the buck brush on Kentucky and Barkley Lakes here, but you know, it was just a little bit later in the year, so therefore finding that quality was a little bit tougher. And, you know, to the number of fish that we've got in the lake, you know, going back to, you know, years ago, I mean, gosh, you could still catch fish flipping on up into the month of June, you know, on islands and if, you know, places where, especially down south on the lake, where there's a lot more cover in the water. But anyway, overall, you know, good weights this spring, but fishing was just a little bit different just because the weather conditions, lack of current, things like that. But it's finally turned summertime. Here we are. I'm looking outside the window right now. It was hot and muggy a few days here. It's been a really windy spring as well. You know, you guys that have fished know that, I mean, it wasn't very many days out there where it wasn't ripping 20, 25 mile an hour out of the north or south, one of the two. So it's finally starting to calm down a little bit. Still get some breezy days, but it's been pretty nice and pleasant. Finally starting to get some warm, muggy nights. That's what it takes to drive those fish out. It's what we look forward to this time of year every year. We're into the first couple weeks of June. And I remember saying this, we're actually, first couple days. You know, this is the time of year. Memorial Day hits, and usually that week or that next week is usually when those fish really start making a big push. Finding several schools, not a lot of big schools. Not saying they're not out there. I'm sure somebody's finding some big giant wads. But, you know, one thing to keep in mind here is I hear a lot of chatter about, you know, quality fish versus numbers. I mean, we're still a long way away from the good days of Kentucky Lake. And what I mean is like that 10, 12, 13, 14, 15, right around in that time period there. We had so many more fish in the lake. And, you know, will it ever get to those days again? I don't know. I think we're well on our way if things don't change. I mean, gosh, the number, and that's something else we'll talk about, the number of 13, 14-inch fish that's in the lake right now. Generally, when those fish first move out, that's when you catch your big ones. And years ago when the lake fished really, really good, you know, you hear about history, there wasn't too many of those small fish in the lake. So therefore, when you found a school, it was big ones. And I'm seeing here recently, you'll find some good schools once in a while, but you'll also find a lot of schools that have those 13 to 14 inches. Actually, it's even hard to catch keepers out of them, but a lot of bites. You can catch a lot, and it's very encouraging for the future of the lake. I tell people that all the time. It's not only fishing pressure, but, we had a lot more fish back then. So now, whenever you're out there looking around and you find a school of fish and you go to them a couple of days in a row, and the next day they don't bite very good, remember they're getting fished, and there's not as many in that school. I think back on history because it's hard for me not to think about what it once was, and a lot of the younger generation they didn't see that. But you hear the chatter about it, and nowadays it might be 20 fish in a school or even 10 in a school, and back then, gosh, you'd find 50 plus fish schools regularly, and there were just so many more fish to go through. It does a couple of things. If you're the only one fishing a spot, you can continue to go back to them. Well, now there's more people fishing right now, June 2nd, 2026, than there ever has been. Not only on Kentucky Lake, but everywhere. High school fishing, college fishing. Things have changed over the years, and there's more people fishing today than there ever has been. And you can't tell me that the technology and the number of people on the boat, or the number of people on the water, things don't start affecting. I think fish are harder to catch today than they were 10 years ago. I really believe that. I don't think it's the same. I think that now you're seeing a whole lot more drop shots, Nico rigs, things like that, versus the bigger power baits that we used to catch them on. But anyway, fish are moving out. They're starting to move. Don't be surprised if you don't find a lot of little fish in schools. There are a handful of places that's got some good ones out there. You just got to keep looking. I tell people all the time in the boat, you can't camp out on a place. You guys that want to drag a Carolina rig or a worm around, yeah, you can go out there and drag around a place, catch one here, one there. But when you start complaining about not catching very many big ones, Kentucky Lake don't have any big ones in it anymore. Trust me, they're out there. You've got to move. Pick up that trolling motor and go. Burn some fuel. I'm the world's worst at putting in the middle of the lake and going south a little ways and then coming north a little ways. But you've got to that's the name of the game, is hitting as many places as you can in a day's time. Hitting those fresh ones. There's fresh ones coming out every day. Water temperatures finally hit that 78 to 80 degree mark. So it's, as we speak, there's more fish coming and coming. And, I look for at least a month of really good offshore fishing. It seems like there's a handful of places where fish are up on top of the stuff already. And what I mean is on top of the ledges in, let's say, 12 to 15. But a lot of the better quality I've been finding are out there in that 20, 22, 25 foot range. And certain baits, to catch those fish out in that deeper water. But we'll dive into just a few things. The Crush 300 ED, this has probably caught more fish on that bait right there, quality-wise. It's a chartreuse blue. This one's called Blue Truth Shad is what Six calls theirs. That bait right there, I throw that bait a ton. I mean, I love a big crankbait. And now you're limited on what depth range you can get that 300, but we make 3 different sizes, a 300, 400, and a 500 in this bait if you're looking for those fish that are out there in deeper water. Typically, if they get out deeper, I'm throwing a spoon. This is the Nichols Mini Mag. I throw it a good bit out here. And then we've got the Magnum spoon, the 8-inch or the 9-inch spoon as well, to trigger some of those fish. Now, what I like to do a lot of times is I'll find those fish out there and you see them ticked along the bottom and they won't bite anything. It seems like you can get them, you can get them fired up on that spoon a lot of times, kind of get the school going, especially if they're out there in that deeper water. I don't throw it up as much on that shallower stuff because there's things that you can hang up. You're kind of limited on where you can throw that bait. But and then a swim bait. This one right here, this is the Ignite Frenzy 5-inch on a 3/4 ounce head. A couple of different colors. That is the Sexy Shad, and then the Kentucky Lake Special, little chartreuse, purple colors. Any of those colors work on a swim bait. But 3/4 ounce head, I've caught several on that. They started showing up on some of those places that we like to throw that crankbait and that swim bait. So encouraging to see that. The last few years, it's just gotten better and better every year, it seems like. And this year's no different. Fish are starting to act a little bit funny. I may have touched on this already a little bit, but I remember saying this last year about this time. It seems like the fish are acting like it's July already. Usually we'll get a few good weeks of ledge fishing in before they get beat up, and everybody's out there fishing them. Schools are getting rotated. That happens. It happens every year. It's not just Kentucky Lake. Tennessee River, offshore lakes, they just get pounded and get beat on. And that's why you got to keep moving. Finding fresh schools. Don't be afraid to take your electronics and look. But the power baits, that's my thing. That's what I love to do. I'm looking for that if I can find it that first couple weeks of June, because it's just not going to last very long. They'll get off of that stuff. Not saying you can't catch them on it later on in the summer, but they'll get off of that stuff quicker, and then you'll transition over into the jigs, worms, stuff like that. The dirty jigs, this is the casting jig. I like that watermelon color. It's actually, here's one in the football jig. You can see it there. It's kind of a watermelon, got a little bit of chartreuse. And then I put the bongo. This is the 6 cents bongo on the back of it. You can see it's just a kick and tail. Now what I'll do a lot of times, this time of year especially, if I'm not fishing around cover, cut that weed guard out of that thing. I'm not a dragger. I don't take that football jig out there and drag it around super, super slow. I'm trying to get those fish to react. So I actually cut that weed guard out of that thing. And that way you can still drag it and you can hop it, whatever you want to do. But it seems like a lot of those places that I'm finding those fish schooled up, they're kind of hard to catch. They're not easy to catch, and you've kind of got to trigger them and hopping that jig up in front of their face a lot of times. A drop shot, the Nico rig, this is the 6 cents glitch. You've watched any of my stuff, this is literally the only bait that I put morning dawn glitch on a drop shot. Now, I'll try something once in a while, but that is the bait on Kentucky Lake for a drop shot. The Nico rig, those hard to, those pressured fish, those places that they don't really act like they want to bite, the Nico rig and the drop shot, they're money. Plum fleck on a Nico, 1/8 ounce head on a spinning rod. No secret, the Nico rig's been around a long time. Catch a good many fish on it throughout the summer. And as it gets tougher and tougher, you've heard me say it, that is the bait. I'm telling you, on a Nico rig or a drop shot, those two baits the rest of the summer will be on the front deck of the boat for the next 2 months for sure. Starting to catch a few on a big worm. This is the Boosa 9.6 ribbon tail from 6. This is a cool color too. It's plum dawn. It's been out. It's nothing new, but it's kind of got that plum side on one side and then the morning dawn on the other side. A really cool bait. That big worm, it's a staple on the Tennessee River. It's one of those baits that you can take that and catch them just about anywhere throughout the summer. Typically, when those fish start moving up on top of that stuff, that's when we'll start throwing that big worm. But I've got one rigged up. We've caught a few on it already this year. So just rotate through baits. The fishing is not easy. There's a handful of places out there where it's pretty good. And then there's a handful of places that you just know that's what's there because you'll catch a few of them. But them suckers are just hard to catch. And they should be biting. But just remember, my advice to you, I guess, been here a long time, fished this lake my whole life. The number of fish just aren't there. Don't get me wrong. There's still a pile of fish in this lake. It is slap full of them. But if you're comparing it to years ago, which a lot of you guys do, you just got to understand that the number's not there, and you've got to bounce around. Don't be afraid to fill that boat up and run around and look for new places. Don't beat on the same places all year long. Now, I do know, I've been here a long time. I know that the fish get on the same places year after year, and the fishermen fish the same places year after year. I do the same thing, but I have found some sneaky little places by just not picking up a rod, just getting out there and idling around. So that's kind of it in a nutshell here. What's going on Kentucky Lake? Summertime's here. We're in the first couple of days of June here. I look for the next month or so to be, the fishing's just going to get better. I think there's a BFL this weekend, maybe the Bill Dance Big Bass Tournament I think is going on out of Paris. So good luck to all you guys fishing. If you're in the area, I always say it, the guys at Sonar Solutions, we do marine electronics installs, for anything from batteries, marine electronics, trolling motors, everything there. Check those guys out. 270-460-0733. Speak to Dave there. He'll get you fixed up. And then you guys want to get on the water. I'm pretty well booked up through the middle of July, but if you want a trip, try to get maybe an afternoon. I do some afternoons in June occasionally. Occasional Saturday, it's not very often, but you guys want to get on the water. Any questions? Marine electronics training, I do all 3 brands. A fishing trip, email info@brandonhunterfishing.com, and I will see you guys on the water.